Hello, friends, and Merry Christmas 2024. So we're near the end of the year now. Um, and I think the major thing that I've achieved this year is my trip to Peru and Chile, and also the travelogue which I have produced after it. So here is the book cover. I think I've already shown it in one other video, but Peru and Chile, a travelogue with family history. That's a golf course in Chile, Santo Domingo. Rocas de Santo Domingo, and there's a ball about to be played on the spine, there you see. And this is the golfer on the back. Um, and my grandfather is there. So, okay, so what I'd like to do is share the first the family history section and the itinerary, the introduction of the itinerary. So here it is. Peru and Chile, a travelogue with family history, September 1st, 29th, 2024. That's me, and there's details of its availability on Amazon as a Kindle, a paperback, and a hardcover. Um, and the book is dedicated to my grandfather, Alexander MacDonald, and all his family. All right, so this is the foreword, which was very kindly provided by Paul Madden, who is a former British ambassador to Japan. So I'm going to read this now. Ian Ruxton is an inveterate traveller and historian. Following his retirement from a long and distinguished academic career in Japan, he continues to be a prolific writer. As you get older, you tend to take more of an interest in your forebears and where you came from. In Ian's case, there is a fascinating pedigree to explore. Both sides of his family were part of that British diaspora that spread over distant lands in the first part of the 20th century. This has given Ian the opportunity to undertake some epic journeys in search of his ancestors. A previous trip took him to Sri Lanka, where his father came from. The journey recounted in this travelogue is to Peru and Chile, where his maternal grandparents lived and where he himself was born. Illustrated with copious photographs by the author, this is the story of a man in search of his family history. Ian discovers the font he was baptized in Peru. He visits the school attended by his uncle who died in the Second World War. But most of all, he visits sites linked to his grandfather's hobbies, golf and fly fishing. It is clear that Alexander MacDonald was an interesting man who became a senior figure in the expat community. Ian finds a splendid painting of him in the golf club he founded and designed with his own hand. With notes and photos, of travel routes taken, food eaten, and sites visited, including the spectacular Machu Picchu, it is hard not to become a little bit envious of the fun Ian must have had on this trip. Perhaps one of the nicest things to emerge from the piece is compelling evidence of the kindness of strangers. People who didn't know Ian at all seemed willing to drive him around golf courses, take him fishing, and delve in the baptismal records of an Anglican church. No doubt partly a result of the author's friendly demeanour, but also confirmation that you can find nice people and make friends wherever you travel, as his forebears no doubt found too. Paul Madden, CMG FRGS, British Ambassador to Japan, 2017 to 21, in November 2024. It was very kind of him to write that. Very kind indeed. All right, well, let's move on. First of all, we got the maps. There's a map of Peru. And so the main places I went were Lima and Cusco and Puerto Maldonado here on the border with Bolivia. I also went to Callao, which is the port of Lima. Didn't really have time to do anything else, but I was in the country twice, once on the way down to Chile and once on the way back from Chile on the way home to Japan. Okay, so that's Peru. And there's an awful lot which I haven't seen, of course. And then we've got Chile, which is so long and thin that it's quite hard to find a suitable map. Excuse me. But I started in Santiago, Yeah. And I went down to the sea, to Santo Domingo, which is near Valparaiso. And also I went as far as I flew down to Pucón, down here. Well, actually, Villarrica is not marked here, but Villarrica is on the same lake as Pucón. I think the lake is itself called Villarrica or Villarrica. And then I also went up to, if I can find it up there, yes, San Pedro de Atacama in the desert region in the north of Chile. Okay, so quite close to the Bolivian border there. Okay, so that was my time in Chile. And okay, the foreword I've just read, and I've just introduced the maps to you. I will read the introduction shortly, but here's the travelogue. Peru, arrival in Lima, September 2nd. Then went to Cusco on the next day. Went on from Cusco to Puerto Maldonado on the 8th of September. And back to Cusco on the 11th. And then back to Lima. And from there on to Chile on September the 14th. Day trip to Santo Domingo, Santiago to Villarrica. These numbers on the right are page numbers. And from Villarrica on September 19th to San Pedro de Atacama, all the way up in the north, as I just showed you on the map. And returning to Santiago on the 22nd of September and returning from Santiago to Lima on the 23rd. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 nights in Lima, and back via Los Angeles to Korea, and then on to Fukuoka, Japan, which is where I live, Fukuoka Prefecture. All right, so I will now read the introduction. If I could just get down there. Yep, here we go. Family history. My family's connections with Peru and Chile began with my maternal grandparents, Alexander, Alex or Mac to his wife and close friends, MacDonald, and Dorothy, née Northcroft. She was born in the Bahamas, the daughter of a Methodist missionary. They came independently from Britain to Peru and met there. They were married at the Anglican Cathedral in Lima on the 24th of June, 1922, lived happily in Peru from 1922 to 1927, and thereafter in Chile until my grandfather's death in 1954. There's the portrait of my grandfather at Rocas de Santo Domingo Golf Club, which he founded and designed. It's right in the middle of the golf club there. And this is what it says below in Spanish under the portrait. Alexander MacDonald, diseñador y realizador del campo de golf, presidente del Club de Golf Santo Domingo, 1943 to 1954. This is the plaque below the portrait at Rocas de Santo Domingo Club, acknowledging Alexander's role as designer and developer of the golf course and president of the club, 1943 to 54. And there is Dorothy, although she preferred to be called Susan, and Alexander MacDonald, husband and wife. In March 1945, Alexander wrote, "I've always loved Susan, and there never could be anyone else in my affections. Throughout 23 years of married life, we had a lot of ups and downs, but had always loved each other. Often, far too often, I was a trial to her, and sometimes she irritated me beyond measure. I do not believe it is possible for a man and woman to live happily together with never a cross word. Under such circumstances, one of them must be a yes man or a yes woman, a condition which can only mean a complete lack of character. In our case, there was plenty of character on both sides, and I think a great deal of genuine understanding. I often wish I had those 23 years to live over again to make up for my many shortcomings." That's from his memorial to his son Ian. Okay, there they are. My grandparents, somewhere in Chile. The children. The MacDonalds had three children: Ian, 1923 to 1945, Mary, 1925 to 1925, and my mother, Margaret, 1932 to 2022. Alexander was a man of many talents, one of which was writing, and he wrote a memorial of his son, Ian, who was killed in Germany fighting for the Black Watch Regiment in February 1945. Mary died tragically of meningitis during an epidemic before her first birthday. She is buried in Callao, in Peru, near Lima, the port of Lima, effectively. And I found her grave there in September 2024, which I was able to have repaired. Margaret married Alan Day Ruxton, 1925 to 2017, in 1954, about 10 days before Alexander's death, and they had four children. I am the eldest child and son, born in 1956. So there's Ian MacDonald at the Grange School in Santiago. At least I think it's a Grange School portrait. Possibly it could be a Loreto School portrait, but anyway, there's Ian in Black Watch uniform, 1944. And this is Aunt Mary's grave in Callao, in the British cemetery, after it was repaired. I had it repaired. Okay, so it looks pretty good now. You'll see, if you look in the travelogue, the photographs I took, you'll find how it looked when I first found it, which was not so good. Career. Why did Alexander come to Peru? In the first place, he was traveling from Britain to Chile for his health and had no intention of living in Peru. In World War I, after his law studies at Glasgow University were interrupted during his freshman year, 1914, he fought in the trenches in France in the 6th Battalion of the Seaforth Highlanders and suffered a poison gas attack, which left him with lifelong bronchial asthma and saw him invalided out of the army in 1916 to 17. The only effective treatment in those days was a change of climate. Alexander's native Scotland was too damp, and Chile was among the recommended countries. After studying very hard in the front room of the family home in Glasgow and qualifying as an accountant member of the Glasgow Institute of Accountants and Actuaries in 1919, Alexander obtained a job in Chile with the accounting firm Deloitte Plender Griffiths and Company and set off by steamer via the Panama Canal. When he reached Callao, the port for Lima, Peru, he received instructions from Santiago to disembark and stay in Lima as the partner there had just died. This delayed his proceeding to live in Chile by 8 years. In Chile, Alexander became the senior partner of the firm, which, until his retirement on the 30th of September 1948, comprised both Peru and Chile. So in that sense, it was good that he gained his first work experience with the firm in Peru. He had many business connections through his work, and after 1948 he worked until his death as managing director of Industrias Eléctricas y Musicales Odeon S.A., a subsidiary company of EMI. This job suited him very well, as he loved classical music and new technology, so he was able to get his hands on many 78 RPM records and LPs, 33 1/3 RPM, when they were first developed, long playing records. He was also a competent piano player and played the organ on Sundays in the Anglican Church in Santiago. Hobbies. Alexander MacDonald was a man with two major hobbies, both acquired during his youth in Scotland: golf and fishing. He played golf to a decent standard and designed golf courses in both Chile and Peru. He was a dedicated administrator of the game, mainly as treasurer and secretary, suitable roles for an accountant, but also apparently in 1947 as president of the Chilean Golf Association before it became a federation in the following year. The records there are a little bit unreliable, but he certainly was president of the association at some point, I think. It was therefore natural for me to visit as many of the golf courses as I could during my trip in September 2024. In Peru, I visited Los Incas and Lima golf clubs. In Chile, Rocas de Santo Domingo and Pucón. The Santo Domingo course now has 27 holes, but Alexander was responsible for designing the first 18. It was the jewel in the crown of the courses which he designed and a labor of love. He was the club's first president, 1943 to 54, and is recognized as its founder. His portrait is displayed proudly in the center of the clubhouse, though I discovered that club members did not know much about him, which added to my motivation to find out more about him. While golf is a very social activity based on the clubhouse and its adjacent course, fishing is a more solitary, philosophical, and contemplative pastime, except perhaps in the evening after a day's fishing, when the day's results are discussed. Alexander was urged by friends to write a book about the sport of fly fishing with rod and line in Chile, about which he had extensive knowledge, and he began to write it during a period of enforced idleness due to illness in 1938. It was ready for publication in 1941 too, but by this time the world was at war again and paper was rationed, so publication was impossible. It was not until 2017 that I published the typescript as Trout Fishing in Chilean Rivers on lulu.com and Amazon KDP, updated with the original maps in 2023. By this time, the detailed information on the best rivers, etc., was probably out of date, but the humor was not. The foreword was apparently written by the distinguished politician and diplomat Agustin Edwards McClure, 1878 to 1941, shortly before his death on 18th of June, 1941. His son Agustin Edwards Budge, 1899 to 1956, was a friend who shared Alexander MacDonald's love of golf and fishing, and they seem to have worked together to design the Los Leones Golf Club's course in Santiago, which opened in 1937. In the foreword, completed in Santiago in May 1941, McClure professed ignorance of fishing. All I know about fish, and in particular of rainbow trout, is that I find them delicious to eat, and my own speciality is to find more bones than other people in every mouthful. Yet he also had kind words for Alexander, praising his sense of humor and adding, "As a Chilean, I feel I owe a debt of gratitude to the author for writing a book about a sport which is bound to attract English-speaking visitors to my country. It shows that, in the many years he has spent here, he has felt in congenial surroundings and among people he likes. That is always a reciprocal feeling, and one never likes people who do not like you. For life is like a mirror that smiles at you when you smile back." He repays generously the hospitality we have been glad to give him and shows we gave it to the right person. Attracting English native speakers to Chile was indeed Alexander's main motivation for writing the book. Native speakers for the purpose of fishing, that is, of course. Here is my mother, Margaret Ruxton, née MacDonald, holding the Alexander MacDonald Cup at Los Leones Golf Club in 1995. A replica of the cup, which is played for annually, is awarded to the champion team of over 40-year-old golfers from clubs throughout Chile. In November 2024, it was won again by Los Leones Club. And here's my grandfather and my mother, his daughter Margaret, aged about 7. And then something about their voluntary work and honors. Alexander and Dorothy were committed voluntary workers and were imbued with a strong spirit of service to their community in Chile. Dorothy was awarded the MBE, Member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, in 1934 for her relief work after an earthquake. And Alexander was awarded the CBE, Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, in the New Year's Honours List of January 1943 for his work on behalf of the British war effort as chairman of the British National Service Committee, BNSC, since its formation in 1939. This was a leading role in the British community in raising morale and combating Nazi propaganda, though again ill health forced him to stand down from the chairmanship in the same year. I do not yet know much about Alexander's contribution to the British war effort in Chile, and there is probably quite a lot of material in the National Archives UK to be discovered. I'm very grateful to Professor Roberto Perez Castro, now at the University of Kent, author of several works on the British community in Chile during the World Wars, for showing me a letter dated 25th November 1940 from my grandfather on official BNSC Santiago notepaper to Richard Allen at the British Embassy in Santiago, acknowledging Alan's letter of the 22nd instant and stating, I am pleased to be able to tell you that, at the suggestion of Hogg of the Press Bureau, a verbal message to the community was sent out through the contact men the day before the mortal storm commenced, advising everybody not to fail to see it. I'm quite sure that many of our people have seen it and enjoyed it. This film is quite the best anti-Nazi propaganda I have seen, and I know that it has gone down very well with the Chileans. I had read the book 2 years ago and enjoyed it, but the film impresses me even more. I think we should take every opportunity of spreading the news about shows such as this, and I shall be grateful if you will drop me a hint in future, as you did in this case. So I've got footnotes about the film and the book titled The Mortal Storm, and a recent academic article, Understanding Anti-Semitism from a Neglected Film and Novel. Chile was a neutral country at the start of the Second World War, only breaking off diplomatic relations with all the Axis powers on the 20th of January 1943. There were many Chileans of German and Italian extraction, in fact, a larger number than their British counterparts. So this made for an awkward and delicate situation in the country as regards winning hearts and minds for the Allied cause. Gradually, Chilean opinion was won round to supporting the Allies, Britain and the USA, as the tide of the war turned against the Axis powers by the end of 1942. Chile declared war on Japan on the 13th of April 1945. Given this background, it seems my grandfather's work was quite critical in winning over the Chilean people, and its importance was recognized through the award of the CBE. When I visited Chile this year, September 14th to 23rd, I did not have any information about where my grandfather was buried and was not thinking about that. My focus was on his legacy as seen in the golf courses which he designed. I have since learned that he was buried in the Cementerio General in Santiago, the main cemetery in the city since 1821. Since he was not Catholic, he was buried in the Disidentes section, Patio de Disidentes. I created a page for him on findagrave.com with a request that somebody kindly add a photograph of the grave. Well, it would be nice to see his grave and what condition it's in. Yeah, there's the reference there. Okay, I think I'll stop here today and perhaps continue later. But anyway, thank you very much for listening if you have listened up to this point. Thank you, and stop the recording. Yes.